iPhone 14 Pro. You pretty much know what you're going to get each year when Apple rolls out the new iPhone models, and the leaks this year pretty much gave away any surprises regarding the new hole punch design, replacing the notch. Then Apple surprised everyone and made it actually kind of useful. Build-wise, the 14 Pro is pretty much identical to last year's 13 Pro. You have very slightly smaller bezels and the camera bumps are a little bit bigger, but everything else is pretty much identical. And that's not a bad thing. The iPhone's solid build just screams quality, and even the smaller 6.1-inch Pro size has some heft to it, though nowhere near as much as the huge 6.7-inch Pro Max. Most people actually go for the Pro Max, but I actually prefer the one-handed usability of the smaller Pro model. I love the matte finish on the back, although the steel side rails do attract quite a lot of fingerprints in day-to-day use. Speaking of the 6.1-inch screen, this year's AMOLED panel has increased brightness for good outdoor visibility, and the colors really stood out to me and look a lot sharper and more vivid than last year. The AMOLED panel also comes into play with the new always-on display Apple finally added, although admittedly quite a few years after Android phones. And I actually found myself preferring Android's version, as Apple seems to just dim the whole display as opposed to completely blacking out the entire screen. I found Apple's version more distracting than anything, frequently mistaking the always-on display's lit-up screen as a new notification. And that's not to mention the larger than expected battery drain the always-on display provided. No, it wasn't huge, but in the end, I ended up just turning the feature off. Performance is still crazy good as there's a new A16 Bionic chip this year. That's only available in the Pro models as the regular iPhone 14s get last year's A15 chipset, which to be fair is still one of the strongest on the market. This phone's still got 5G antennas, which it's had for a while, but that's really only going to matter to you depending on where you live. Phone calls are clear and the dual speakers once again sound excellent. Battery life is slightly improved, though it was and still continues to be much better than most other phones, especially in this size. Apple's only promising about an hour extra in day-to-day use, but I've had no issues ending each day above 15%, even with heavy use. Sadly, the Lightning port is what you'll still be using to recharge. There's still no USB-C. Thankfully, wireless charging is still an option with MagSafe if you prefer easy alignment, though it works just fine on regular wireless chargers. Moving on to the biggest change this year, the new hole punch cutouts on the front, which Apple calls the Dynamic Island.
That's our dynamic.
Naming conventions aside, Apple has managed to take something that, once again, has been on Android for years and make it feel like a feature. What you've actually got is two cutouts in the screen, one for the selfie camera and one for the Face ID, but Apple blacked out the pixels in between, giving it a more uniform look. And the result is, well, dynamic.
Wink, finger gun.
The animations are great and feel so fluid as they slide around and grow and shrink for things like Face ID, a music player, and other notifications, without ever getting in the way. Having the smaller iPhone Pro also helps to be able to reach the top when you want to interact with the notifications. It's safe to say that this is easily Apple's best notification system they've ever had. Now it does stand out more than the notch if, say, you're watching a video with the phone in landscape mode, but your eyes get used to it and it's not too bad. Oh, and if you're an Android user feeling envious, there's already a mod that you can download that looks pretty similar.
We can weaken the dynamic.
The cameras also get a big jump this year. The main camera is now a 48 megapixel lens, up from 12 megapixels on the 13. You can shoot 48 megapixel RAW photos with these, though I wouldn't really recommend it. These make huge files, usually around 80 to 100 megabytes. Now these have a ton of detail, but you can still shoot standard binned 12 megapixel photos that still look great. Apple also now includes a 2x zoom when you open the camera app, as opposed to the usual 1 and 3x zoom, and that's a result of the new sensor. The camera essentially crops the sensor of the 48 megapixel shot and gives you the optical zoom. Video recording is still best in class at up to 4K 60 frames per second. One new feature Apple's been touting this year is the new action mode, which gives you gimbal-like performance when recording really unstable footage like running. You can really see the difference between these two shots here. It does reduce the quality from 4K to 2.8K, and the image is not as sharp, but otherwise it's really solid. Now, not everything has been smooth sailing.
Say what? Say what?
For whatever reason, Apple removed the SIM card tray from the US models, and I can't figure out why. They didn't even do anything with the space that it freed up inside the phone. Now, this wouldn't be an issue if eSIM support was more widespread across the country, but as of now, it's just not. I have a feeling a lot of people don't even know what an eSIM is. I've actually experienced this frustration firsthand as I tried to move from my regular SIM card in the Pixel 6a to this iPhone.
I can be dynamic.
What should have taken about 20 seconds ended up taking over an hour as my number didn't move over for some reason and I couldn't get calls or texts working on my phone. It's probably easier if you're coming from another iPhone instead of an Android, but either way it's a hassle that as of now serves no purpose. Maybe Apple is trying to make the move to the eventual portless iPhone. So where does that leave us? Well, pricing didn't change this year, at least in the US, as the 14 Pro still starts at $999 with 128 gigabytes of storage. Now whether that's a fair value is up to you, but this year definitely feels like a bigger improvement than the move from the 12 to the 13 felt. And never has the gap been wider between the Pro and non-Pro models. Nearly all of the new features were added to the Pro models this year, leaving the regular 14s as essentially a copy and paste of last year's model. Whatever you decide, don't buy the regular iPhone 14. As for me, I'm really enjoying this 14 Pro and it feels like a proper step up. But that's all I got for today. I appreciate you watching. If you liked it, please subscribe. Until next time.